from Hemmingford, Quebec, everybody. I'm David Smith, or Data Smith on Lichess, and welcome to a short report on round 3 of the Hemmingford Chess Club's 2026 Championship. I'd like to look at just 2 positions today. The first one is what you see up here on the screen. Comes from the game played between Vladek and Ron a couple days ago. What we're looking at is the position after move 11, Black's 11th move, which was essentially to bring his knight from f6 back to h7. And we're essentially at the end of the opening. And one of the things about the opening, even though it's easy to screw up in the opening, one of the good things about it is that usually the plans are pretty clear. You need to get your pieces out, you need to get castled, and you need to make sure that you have a fair share of the center. And that's essentially what's happened here. Both sides have castled. All of the minor pieces are developed, with the exception of Black's light squared bishop. Though you could argue that that piece is developed in the sense that it does have access to squares out in the board. So far so good. We've got to the end of the opening, and now comes the hard part. And I don't know about you, but I'm often really at a loss as to what to do once I've done the basic work of getting my pieces out and into the board. At this point, you have to essentially make a plan. It doesn't have to be a plan that's going to take you into move 60 and a checkmate on the back rank or anything like that, but it does have to be a plan that improves the position somewhat over the next few moves at least. And to make that plan, you've got to evaluate what's going on in the position and know, therefore, what you need to do. In situations like this, where the center is essentially going to be quite static, all these pawns here are not moving in anytime soon. What typically happens in these positions is that one side or the other has to look for what's called a pawn break. So essentially, Black could attack the white center by playing a move like this, for instance. The idea being to undermine the d-pawn by attacking one of its defenders. Black could also do it this way, undermining the other defender of the d-pawn. White has the same kinds of possibilities, though in this case, playing b4, for instance, is not likely to undermine the center at all, since Black has already got essentially taken preventative measures there with a5. That keeps the bishop on c5, the knight on c5, more or less in that position, almost impossible for White to dislodge it. The other break that White has, of course, is f4. The idea being to attack the head of the pawn chain here, this way. And indeed, that's what White plays. So this is White's 12th move, f4. Now, just because you need to play, or just because breaking down the center usually involves pawn breaks, doesn't mean that you must play a pawn break. And here, I think perhaps White is a bit too ambitious in this pawn break. Because, as we know, pawns move only in one direction, and every time you move a pawn forward, you leave behind squares that are undefended. So in this case, the pawn that used to be on f2 used to be protecting g3. Now on f4, this square is undefended, and Black immediately takes the opportunity to play knight h4. Bishop h4. Now, when White originally played this pawn move, or this pawn break, I'm sure White was saying to themselves, well, look, there could be an exchange here on f4, and then potentially Black has some pressure against my e-pawn. But I have knight here, both protecting e4. The bishop can always head to f3. Even the queen could go to c2 if necessary, and we can certainly reinforce that e4 square. So this is, I assume, what White's idea was. But by Black playing bishop to h4, taking advantage of this weak square, Black essentially gets to remove one of the defenders right off. So now the e4 pawn is only protected by one piece. It's attacked by one piece. And so Black exchanges on e4. and then immediately adds another attacker to e4. To which white responds by bringing their knight back in to defend e4, and we get a little bit of an arms race going on here where black adds another attacker, white adds another defender, and then black essentially has no more attackers to add to e4, but can remove a defender by exchanging off the bishop or the knight on f2. Rook takes f2, and now black has 3 attackers. 1, 2, 3, and white only has 2 defenders. So black wins a pawn. All these trades happen. And here we are after white's pawn break. Black up a pawn, open lines for sure, but the open lines benefit black easily as much as they benefit white. So nice idea, wanting to open lines to activate the pieces for white, but in fact it didn't really quite work out. Now, to be fair to white, this would have been quite hard to see this far ahead, obviously, but it just underlines how double-edged pawn breaks can be. So when you try it, just be aware that there may be unintended consequences. So that's not terribly useful, is it? But all that to say is that pawn breaks are hard, and it's not for nothing that right up to grandmaster level, choosing the wrong pawn break can make the difference between winning and losing spectacularly. All right, second position to look at is an endgame, my favorite kind of thing. This one comes from Giovanni against John. And in this game, it was actually quite an interesting game, probably worth taking a look at, the whole game, if you like. By the way, I'll put links to both of these games in the notes to the video. You can also find links to all of the games in every round on the score sheet. If you just click on the name of the adversary in the column, I forget what it's called, opponent or something like that. You just click and it'll take you right to the game. All right, back to this game. So the game's been gone back and forth, and here we are in the ending. Black has finally succeeded in advancing a pawn all the way to the point of queening. And essentially, black is going to force white to capture. And now black is up a whole rook, just for that pawn. So this should be an easy win, right? But in fact, things are more complicated than they appear. Mostly by the fact that white's 2 queenside pawns outnumber black's single pawn on a7. And the black king is far, far away from the action, whereas the white king is close. So black has to play carefully here, and white essentially brings the king closer. And here, black plays what seems to make perfect sense as a move. It's a defensive move, and this is where endgames are so tricky. This defensive move, in fact, is not adequate. This draws the game instead of winning the game. So black plays rook to g7, protecting their pawn. White advances, and now white's pawns are so far advanced that it's not going to be possible for black to stop them without having to give up their rook, and with giving up the rook, their advantage. So white continues to advance. There's a trade, and now, despite black's king trying to come to the aid of their rook, there's no way they can stop the advance of the pawn. Black decides to exchange right off here and end the game. But even if they hadn't, if black had decided to, for instance, play here, then white would simply head around to this far side. The black king can keep coming, and on the next move, white is going to queen their pawn, and black will be forced to exchange. Now, if we back up to here, there was actually a better move. There was a move that that would win the game for white. Sorry, back up to here. Instead of this defensive move, black has another move, a very let's see here. What have I got? Oh, and actually we can. Yeah. Black has a this move, which is a very interesting move. It seems to lead to white simply capturing the pawn, but if white does play this, black defends their pawn with rook g6. White's forced to move somewhere. And if white moves this way, for instance, black has now time to bring their king up, because the white king can't go back in this direction because of the rook, can't capture the pawn, and if white advances their pawn, well then black simply captures and this pawn races down to the end. So that's one option. If, on the other hand, black decides to go the other direction and move this way, then black has a free move here to move their king up. If, let's see, if the pawn comes this way, or if white advances their b pawn, we say check. The king goes back there, and then there's a lovely move here where black plays this. Captures the b pawn, and this seems to be a bad move, or not an obvious move, in that now it's going to be quite easy for the white pawn to reach a8. The only difficulty with that is that after white tries a6, black just simply ignores the threat and races their pawn down the board. If we played a7 now, black says, oh, all right, I better do something. And even if black's forced to give up their rook for that pawn, their pawn is going to queen. So take a queen here, black captures, and black wins easily. Anyway, sorry for John that he didn't find that, but like I say, it was not obvious to find, but it was a very elegant and beautiful move. All right, so hope you learned something, and I hope that round 4 goes well for everybody. We're looking at I haven't done the pairings yet, but I'm assuming the algorithm is going to pair our two leaders for round 4, so that should be a game between Hamza and Ron. I'm not sure what the colors will be. You should, I guess, as soon as I get the last results for the round, I will be doing the pairings and sending them out. So good luck to all of you, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.